Hey, I'm going to teach you guys how to draw a rectangle. You're going to draw four straight lines and put them together, and then you have a rectangle. Today we are going to be drawing a cat making his way through the grocery store. This cat is based off of my friend Sarah's siblings' cat. They have two cats, Meatball and Rigatoni. And the cat that you see here in the bottom right of my iPad screen is Rigatoni. New to the family, hello Rigatoni. I'm honoring his presence and welcoming him with a beautiful little drawing. Basically, Sarah had sent this picture to the group chat, and I immediately went, well, that needs to be drawn. So now I am drawing this beautiful little cat. Um, this drawing in total took about 2.5 hours, maybe 2 hours and 45 minutes. It's funny once you start recording yourself drawing all of the hand mannerisms that you notice yourself doing and how much time you spend just looking at what you're making. Because I edited a good probably 10 minutes of me just moving the canvas around in Procreate, looking at what I was doing and just staring, which is really funny. So total time about 2 hours and 45 minutes. I work in Procreate, like I said, and I'm using the HB pencil in there. I usually use the HB pencil for everything that I do. I'm not very into super duper clean looking line work. That's not my kind of drawing style. So I like the more grainy, organic looking pencil texture that the HB pencil under this sketch. It's literally just a preset brush. I don't change anything around. I do have an HB brush that I created to shade more, which if I ever upload another YouTube video again on here, I will show you that. I don't know how I made it. I just kind of played around until I figured out what I liked. But yeah, I literally couldn't tell you the last time that I drew an animal. I primarily draw people, but something about this picture was just so endearing. And I've been trying to make more work that makes me happy to make and I have fun doing, because that's what it's all about. So I immediately went into a fugue state and started drawing this cat with his shopping cart full of goodies, which you will see later on. But right now we're in the sketching process. I'm getting everything kind of relative to size and scale. I always start with the head. I come in and I sketch the general shape of the body, the legs. The head will always determine the size of everything else, so you want to make sure that that's about the right size. And that's true whether you're drawing people or animals or whatever. Anything that's got a head. I did also notice when I draw, sometimes I have a million thoughts going through my head, and other times I have a completely calm mind, no thoughts, head completely empty, brain smooth. And this was a brain smooth drawing. There was about one point where I was like, do I want to draw this realistically or more cartoony? And then I was like, I'm just going to shut up and let myself vibe. And I blacked out completely and just drew for 2 hours straight. And it was so nice. And I think that this cat kind of, the style of it does fall in between a cartoonish and more realistic style. Somewhere I would say equally between the two, which is about where my drawing style falls, especially when I draw people, which is nice because sometimes I can lean into the more cartoony proportions or shapes and then also have more realistic aspects to the details or the folds in the clothing or whatnot. Yeah, but here I am drawing this cat. I do know that the shopping cart drove me absolutely crazy. It was a fun little puzzle trying to figure out like where all of the metal, I guess, rods kind of attached to each other. And this is like, I guess, another point of me not really caring so much about drawing exactly what I see, because that wasn't the intended goal. I knew I wanted to draw like a kind of nice, cute little image. So I wasn't really particularly detail oriented in terms of like how exact I wanted to be to the picture that I was referencing. So I kind of just created a shopping cart that looked like it made sense to me, based off of the picture. So some of the like rods, especially in the front toward where like the cat's little belly is, are not like true to the picture, which doesn't really matter, because I think if you have the idea of something more often than not, that's enough. And there's no rules. It's legal, you know. It doesn't have to be exact. Especially if it's gonna like drive you crazy and make you hate what you're doing. I think like just enough is good enough sometimes, especially with art making. And if it's like slowing you down and making you not want to work on something, then I think it's probably good to take a step back and realize that that's not productive, not a productive mindset, and not a productive habit. And I got that way about the shopping cart, and then there was like one instance where I was like, should I try to draw the texture of the fur on the back of Rigatoni's back? And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. The point of this is to be simple and endearing. So it's like just enough detail, but not enough that it's like overwhelming and that I felt like I was driving myself crazy. You're also going to see that I changed the background a couple of times. So, um, I was trying to determine where I wanted the weight of the image to sit while I was doing this. And I think that this was the part that I probably agonized the most over, because I am not very good with, I guess, like, I wouldn't call it graphic design, but like, I'm not very good at determining like what a background should be for an illustration, because I like was trained as a painter, so like I am thinking about illustration, I guess, with a more painterly mindset, which is sometimes a benefit but also a hindrance, because I'm not really accustomed to figuring out what a background should be or feel like or do, I guess, for an illustration. And sometimes I think I just overthink it also. Um, I have a habit of overthinking choices. So you will see the background change a couple times. Like right now it says shopping in the background, and then the rigatoni is like standing on the square, or the rectangle rather. Um, and that's going to change a couple of times. And I went back and forth about whether or not to include like changing it back and forth. And ended up thinking that it was maybe not that interesting to watch, but I think it's worth mentioning, because it's an organic process to kind of figure things out through trial and error and not just immediately know what you're going to do. And that's the purpose of like sketchbooks and doing thumbnails beforehand, but this was just a drawing that I did just for fun. So there was none of that. This is just going in blind and figuring out what I wanted to do as I went. I do see here that I have a little, I think the goal was to have the receipt stuck to his back, which, or like maybe a checklist of things stuck to his back. I kind of wish that I had kept that in, but there must have been a reason why I chose not to. I don't remember now, but and you'll see here in a minute, this is what I mean about generalizing shape, because when I get to the tail, I decided to do some things differently with the tail than what's actually in the picture, because I just think it was a more visually appealing shape. I think the little point to his tail is very cute, but in terms of like illustrative design, I felt like having a little curl and having it drag on the floor is a little bit cuter. No shade to Rigatoni though. But back to the background, what I was saying is like right now it says shopping and there's a rectangle like underneath a majority of the cat's body and the shopping cart. But you'll see later on that I decided to change that because I wanted the weight to settle on the bottom so that the illustration felt grounded. And then I got rid of the word shopping behind the figure, like the cat, because I felt it was too busy between the shopping cart's busyness and the things in the shopping cart. So you'll see, I get rid of it later on, but what I'm doing now is filling in the black of his little spots, his cute little spots. I'm just using the same brush that I used to do the line work. I really, again, love that kind of grainy texture that it gives, which is also why I don't like draw shapes and then fill in the color that way, because I'm very interested. I'm very inclined to showing that texture in the areas of tone that I'm filling in. So I don't want it to be completely flat black. I want that texture to shine through. So I color everything in by hand. I just think it gives it a more hand-drawn feel, which I like the look of. I know that's not everybody's cup of tea, but I like the look of it. And I also think that adds to like a realism component. So even if the drawing is not necessarily realistic looking, the material that it looks like it was made out of is more realistic looking. So there is like that component still, which I like. The one bit of detail that I do decide to put in for this little cat is that I went in with an eraser. I usually leave my eraser on, I think, like the calligraphy brush. Again, because it feels like a more organic eraser to me, and I can change the opacity of it. But I changed my eraser to the same brush as my pencil, and then I went into the sections of black fur and added some brush strokes to kind of indicate that the white is actually a textured fur without having to go into the white fur with any kind of line work, which is what I'm doing here now. I just think it adds to the shape a little bit, and I like the implication that the white is a textured fur. I think it makes it look nice. It also like helps the really high contrast shapes blend into one another a little bit more organically, which is helpful, especially if you're like me and you like a kind of realistic aspect to your cartoonish kind of work. But the little paws are so cute. I love that like cat's paws like sploot outward when they stand or sit or whatever. I think it's so cute. Yeah. I think they just got this cat like a few days ago, actually. Like very, very recent new addition to the family. It was very fun to also like witness it happen because several months ago the two of them had talked about moving in together, and then like they were throwing up the idea of like, oh, when I get a cat, like I'll name him Rigatoni, so it could be like Meatball and Rigatoni and we can live together. And then that actually happened and I watched it happen in real time, so it was very endearing. And I'm happy for the both of them. And I'm also happy that they have a new cat in their life. We love Meatball and Rigatoni with our whole hearts. You'll also notice, and I totally forgot to mention, that I chose to give Rigatoni a little wristwatch. Because I was like, I want this to still have that little bit of a humor element. Like, yes, it's a cat pushing a shopping cart, and that's funny enough, but this cat's got places to be, and he has a schedule to keep to. And what better way to keep track of all of that than to have her little wristwatch, a little Rolex, or a little fancy cat. So I gave him a little wristwatch. So again, just some artistic liberties. I think it's good to play around, you know. And obviously I'm directly drawing from a picture in this. But it's true of like any kind of reference you use. If you're really trying to just copy your reference imagery, then I think that you're missing kind of like the fun aspects of organically creating a scene that arise, you know? So it's good to kind of like check yourself when you start to think that way. You want to like maybe step back for a second or take a 5-minute break and be like, am I being too precious or too serious about this? Because that can destroy your work and your desire and motivation to want to create work, you know? It's supposed to be fun. I mean, obviously there's different kinds of artists that are very precious and much more serious in their approach to creating things, depending on their subject matter, the context, you know, their process. But I think if you sit down to create something like fun and silly, then you should try to keep that mindset fun and silly. Which is not to say to not care about what you're doing. You can see that I'm going to agonize over this shopping cart for the next probably 10 or 15 minutes. I still very much care about how this turns out, but I'm letting myself kind of do things instead of thinking about how they should be done. Which is hard. It's very hard. Yeah. I do have to say I'm very impressed with my ability to create straight lines freehand. I don't do it for all of them, but these ones here right now, while I'm drawing this shopping cart, all freehand, baby. Again, I love the kind of more, I guess, realistic or like organic feel to the lines being almost perfectly straight. Almost. Right? It's a different feeling than a more like factory streamlined, like this is a perfectly straight, even line. Which I think if like the cat is really hand drawn and then you have like a shopping cart that looks like you basically like traced an image, they kind of detract from each other, and they also kind of fight for like dominance a little bit in the overall feel of the imagery. So you want to kind of temper that by thinking about how exactly you're going to apply like straight lines or curves or whatever it may be. Funnily enough, this shopping cart was actually found on the side of the road by Sarah's friend, who actually pulled over to grab it for her because she thought that she would like it. And when I met Sarah for the first time, it was in the back of her car when we had met. So I just think that there's something really fun about the history behind an image that perhaps an audience just looking at it is not privy to. It feels a little bit like a secret. Because, you know, there's one way to look at this picture. It's a silly little drawing of a cat shopping with a grocery cart. Or you could somehow have the knowledge that, you know, where did the shopping cart come from? Whose cat is that? You know, why was this image even chosen to be drawn? Like that kind of thing. I think it's interesting that the images that we choose to recreate or draw carry some kind of history with them. I like that. I think it's kind of sweet. you're also going to see me begin to really struggle with the shopping cart here. Again, I edited a lot of it out because it's just me sitting there staring at the picture and like my pen hovering back and forth but not really doing anything, while I'm trying to figure out where to place things. So I did edit a lot of it out, but again, worth mentioning that this was not an easy process. Remember, everything goes through iterations, and everybody sits and stares at their work for 10 minutes with a fried brain. At least once. So, again, I think it's worth mentioning. The shopping cart also has like weird little bars at the bottom. I think because it's like a children's shopping cart. So it's maybe, I guess, harder to push or something. Or maybe for like when they get stacked up in a line, like when they're pushed together, or I don't really know, but there's like bars that have, it looks like rubber stoppers at the end of them, on the sides and then at the front of the shopping cart along the bar that connects the wheels. And I chose not to draw those because I was like, that doesn't visually do anything for me. And if anything, it confuses what the idea of a shopping cart is a little bit. So I chose not to include them. I don't really know why they're there. You know, I'm guessing because it's like a kid's shopping cart. I am curious where the shopping cart came from. I don't live close to Sarah. However, I feel like we live close enough that our supermarkets would be relatively similar. And I know none of the supermarkets by me really have them with the exception of one. So maybe it came from there. But I'm curious about the story of it ending up on the side of the road. I know that people steal shopping carts from shopping centers who need them to move things. I understand that. But to steal a children's shopping cart that doesn't really fit much, I'm curious why someone would take it. And also, I guess it could just be for fun. Maybe it was something to do to abscond with a little children's shopping cart. Maybe they pushed a friend in it or something. I don't even really think it's that big, though. To be completely honest, I don't think Rigatoni's even really that big of a cat. So I'd imagine it's pretty small. I don't know. I don't know why someone would steal it. For fun, I guess. I support it. I think it's okay in this instance because it gave us this beautiful picture. But who's to say, you know? I also changed what was inside of the shopping cart. I think it looks like she has her recyclables in there, which good for you. I'm glad you recycle. But I decided to put some groceries in the shopping cart that I thought cats would go to the store for. So I've got some fish in there. I did some cans and boxes at the bottom to not be like too detailed because of all the bars from the shopping cart, and I didn't want it to get too like crazy. And then I have a big old bag of catnip peeking out of the top. I just think that a cat would love to be able to purchase a bulk-sized bag of catnip. I think that they'd love to have it on hand. So I put that in there. I went back and forth about what I wanted in the shopping cart itself. Like I said, I didn't want it to be too detailed or involved because of all of the line work from the shopping cart itself. So I was just thinking like big items. I was originally gonna put like a baguette in there and then also like some leeks, but I was like, that doesn't really have to do with cats so much. So I also wanted to add a big can of tuna, but I couldn't really like work out where to put it without it feeling forced, so I decided not to go with it. But I think what I ended up with, it works out pretty well, and I think it's funny, and it's like things that a cat would want, you know? And yeah, I'm making some adjustments to some of the wheels here and the bar again underneath, just like a little bit of perspective changes. I try not to make a habit of using the cutting tool, like the lasso tool, to change things, because I think it's better to try to work it out first before doing so, but this was not really that big of a deal, so I just did it. I let myself do it. I also just created another layer to darken some of the line work. I do that a lot, and then I will erase certain sections. So now I'm merging them together, so that they're one layer, and I can go in and make any edits after the fact as well. One thing that did happen while I was working on this is my phone actually died while I was filming it. So, I lost I lost probably like 15 minutes. Thankfully, it wasn't too much. But here is why I chose to leave in what I ended up not going with, because I went from having that square in the background to possibly having it oriented like this. And that only became a possible choice or a possible route that I was going to take because of that opening I left, because I didn't choose to connect the rectangle around the entire image. So I thought it would be cute to like write the word shopping there instead, so that you're kind of moving around the image and your eyes are following the line of the rectangle and moving down toward the text that says shopping. So it takes away from the busyness in the background and kind of brings it back down to the bottom where I wanted more weight to begin with. I ended up not particularly liking the layout. Something about lettering being vertical, I don't really love the look of. I feel like it's a lot for the brain to try to decipher, and sometimes it looks really clumsy, in my opinion. And also, I just wasn't really feeling it. But my camera did die, so you are about to see different kind of footage. Thankfully, my iPad recorded everything while I was working on it. So instead of doing the shopping, I chose to make the rectangle on the bottom, again to add weight to the bottom of the image, and give it some nice tile flooring. And Rigatoni also has a little happy face emoticon in a speech bubble, because I think that's cute. And I chose to leave it black and white because I liked the way that it looked in black and white. So anyway, here's the final drawing.